Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, How to Boost Your Immune System Through Movement. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. So all callers will be muted. If you have questions, you should see a little icon at the bottom that says Q&A, or you should see a little button that says chat. You can use either of those, and feel free to ask questions either during the presentation or during the Q&A. We're going to try and tackle as many as we can, depending on how many questions and how much time we have at the end. Also, you'll receive an email with the webinar recording once it's over. And also, if you have to drop off early, we're going to be hosting the webinar on our website as well. And it looks like my screen just jumped, so I'm going to go back to the last screen. Let's see. Dr. Eddy, do you mind just going back to the last screen? It's not letting me. Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Okay. And then if you are on social media, feel free to give us a follow. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We have our social media director here with us today, Erica Crespo. She's going to be helping us on the back end with chat. But if you happen to be on Twitter right now, feel free to tag us at Anticancer. It's at Anticancer, right, Erica? I just want to make sure. Okay, yeah. So feel free to send us a tweet right now. We love interaction during our webinars. But like I said earlier, all of the Q&A and questions will be answered through Zoom. All right, and let's see on the next slide. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Zoom, it can be a little bit confusing in terms of asking questions or using the Q&A. So you have a couple of options. You can use the chat, like I said, or you can use the actual Q&A box. They don't really make a difference to us. We're going to be monitoring both. The chat is, if you have technical issues or anything like that, I would use the chat button. And then also for the view, you have some options. So on the top right, you should see a little grid, and you can choose speaker or gallery. I think with webinars, it sort of auto defaults into a full view of the slides. Okay, and on our next slide, so just a little bit about the Anticancer Lifestyle Program. So the Anticancer Lifestyle Program is a comprehensive online lifestyle transformation course for cancer survivors, but it's also for those who are seeking to reduce their risk of cancer and other chronic illness. We really encourage you to sign up for our course if you haven't done so already. It's free. It's self-paced, it's doctor recommended. So I highly recommend checking us out at www.anticancerlifestyle.org. And Erica will be putting the link in the chat box if you want to access that. The course is broken down into 5 different modules. So diet, fitness, change, mindset, and environment. All right. And in addition to our course, we have several other resources that we make available to our participants. So we have learning circles, and that's really your chance to ask questions about the course every month. We have a toolkit where we post the most up-to-date research and articles. We have our blog and newsletter, which includes everything from recipes to environment tips for your home. So there's a wide range of topics on our blog and our newsletter. We have our webinars, which you all obviously know about. We have our private Facebook group, which is where we really want to build a community and allow people to ask questions to each other and really support each other through the process. And we also have one-to-one coaching. So if you're interested in taking it a step further and better understanding how diet or environment can really impact your health, you can always talk to one of our coaches. Okay. So I think because I'm in presenter mode, I don't know if I can see the chat right now, but I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. And I will ask everyone to just type in where you're calling in from. And I'm going to try and figure out how I can read this from the current view that I have. Let's see. Okay. So we have Camille from Utah. We have Tanya from the UK. We have Judy from Michigan. We have Annette from New Jersey. Susan, Okay, they're coming in really fast. Okay, so everyone can hear me. That's a good sign if they're coming in quickly. All right, so back to the slides. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make introductions. So my name is Seema Tucker, and I'm the marketing director here at Anticancer Lifestyle Program. We have Erica Crespo, who's our social media director, and she's going to be helping us today with chat on the back end. And then we have our main presenter, Dr. Eddy. So Dr. Eddy is a specialist in movement science, is an author, researcher, and performer, and has a doctorate in movement science from Columbia University. So I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Eddy take it over from here.
Okay, well, hello, everyone. It's so great to have everybody coming from so many parts of the United States and actually the world. I am thrilled to be here with Anticancer Lifestyle, an organization that I wholly endorse. I especially want to bring attention to the environmental piece. It's one of the only organizations I'm aware of that goes so deeply into some of the causalities of cancer beyond lifestyle and heredity, and such an important domain. So I'm the founder of Moving for Life, and that means that I created an exercise program for older adults and people with cancer, or anyone dealing with a chronic disease, or anyone similar to anti-cancer lifestyle who just wants to help prevent cancer. So we're looking to feel better and do so with wellness, understanding, and movement that's based in science and research, and also kind of social, emotional well-being. So I'll be talking quite specifically today about immunity and immune function, and yet there'll be a kind of holistic perspective on all of that. So as you can see, I also am right here at the bottom of the slide addressing sitting as the new smoking. I think many of you have heard about that. And if you haven't, go to the Anti-Cancer Lifestyle website. There's some great lectures on it. But the notion here is that just being too sedentary has a lot of deleterious medical, physical effects. And so we want to get moving just for overall well-being. Then we'll talk about specifically how it helps immunity. So here we go. What am I bringing to this discussion of how to boost your immune system through movement? Well, I'm an exercise physiologist, trained at Columbia University. I'm a somatic movement therapist, and I'm going to explain what soma is a few times. Actually, you'll hear me say many things a few times because I feel like that's how people learn best. Soma is the living body. So a somatic movement therapist is a rather holistic movement therapist who's looking at lifestyle as it is, as well as habits, as well as really understanding movement quite deeply, both from the physical end and from the psychosocial end. I'm a professor of dance education. I taught at Columbia University for 10 years. Now I'm in one of the United States' largest dance departments, right in New York City, the heart of the dance world, and that is Marymount Manhattan College. I'm also trained in movement analysis, which means looking at movement very carefully. And I'm very proud to say that all of our teachers get a kind of amalgam of this information. So we have highly, highly skilled teachers in Moving for Life. So I'm the co-founder, together with two other wonderful women, of Moving for Life. I'm the one who designed the exercise program. So let's get to our topic of the day. What is the immune system anyway? Or what's its function? What does it do? Well, it keeps us healthy and safe. It's out there to fight invaders, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and toxins. It also protects us against unusual cell changes. So the immune system, what is it? What makes it up? It's white blood cells, it's different organs, and we'll be getting into that. How do they work? Well, they go to the area, and right away you'll have an inflammatory response, meaning swelling, some redness, different kinds of what seems like almost negative responses. But that's busy work, and important busy work, of getting the area healed. So the heat might be killing the bacteria. The swelling is bringing in the white blood cells through the lymphatic system. So it's the body's normal response. It gets the immune system involved, bringing the white blood cells to injuries or fighting off harmful substances like bacteria and viruses that enter into the body. They quickly react to the damaged area to fix the problem. So this is a good thing. This is where inflammation is a good thing. Here is the anatomy, and I'll have different slides, so get different chances to look. Many of you know that you have tonsils and nodes. So the tonsils are part of the lymphatic system, and they tend to be in different parts of the mouth, upper mouth, and throat area. The lymph nodes are here around the neck, but also at the armpit. You can see the clustering there. And then again in the hip area, they're called inguinal nodes. So these will swell up when they need to be doing more work, either to help filter what's coming through them or to help produce more cells to do the attacking. These blue structures are important. These are the ducts that come into what's called the cisterna chyli, which is the cistern that kind of helps drain the lymph and then moves back into the heart. You see, the heart is not highly featured in this picture because it's actually not a key part of the lymphatic system, but it does play a role. The spleen is another important structure, and we'll talk more about that. Okay. So that's an overview. And notice how the lymph goes down all the way to the feet, through the arms and legs, up into the head. It's everywhere. When does it act? Well, you already know this: when there's tissue damage, when there are germs or some other type of toxic substance. There's also autoimmunity, and it's such an important word that's become so prevalent in the last 20, 30 years that I wanted to just bring it up right away. So an autoimmune condition is when the body perceives its own tissues as foreign. So some part of the body that has always been there, like for instance, Hashimoto's disease with thyroid functioning. The thyroid starts to get attacked because it's perceived as foreign. This is part of immunity. The immune system has the ability to have memory. It's what we call when we say, are there antibodies there? Well, the immune system is remembering what antibodies are in the system. And so that's how it knows how to address certain issues or whether or not there will be a problem. So there's a kind of computerized system, if you will, within our body memory, within the immune system. But sometimes it goes awry and it perceives even normal tissue as an invader. So here we go. Remember that immune systems can react with an inflammatory response, our immune system. How does exercise fit in? Well, it helps clean up the pathogens that are circulating around the body. So why do I say that? The very first question many people ask is there research that kind of substantiates that exercise is important in strengthening the immune system? And the answer is it is basically that a healthy lifestyle strengthens your immune system. So just less exposure, some exposure, but less exposure to toxins is going to be a big one. That's the whole idea behind washing our hands. On the other hand, it's also really important to sleep and rest and to eat well. These are all important, and to exercise. Well, what exactly is exercise doing? One doctor likens it to a housekeeper, that exercise is making sure that we're sweeping through all those different structures I just outlined and killing off pathogens more often. So exercise helps the circulation of the various fighter cells. And that way, if you're exercising regularly, you're keeping things cleaned up. If you're not exercising, it will build up more, and there's just more work to do when a really strong pathogen comes in. The other thing that's really helpful about exercise is that it can help reduce inflammation. So if you're already inflamed from an injury or from arthritis, and we'll talk more about itises because all inflammations sort of basically have the term itis at the end of it, then some exercise is going to help reduce some of that inflammation. So here I was referring to the inflammatory response. So inflammation and the immune system kick in for an injury. I'm repeating myself: illness and infection, tumors or cancers, and it's nature's response. So through inflammation, and we call that, and to any itis. So the symptoms of inflammation are joint swelling, the gut getting kind of irritable. So that's an itis. Cells like cellulitis, just about anywhere in the body can have an itis as well. Uveitis is in the eyes. Swelling is okay. Again, it's coming to the rescue. But when it becomes chronic, we need drainage, we need circulation, which means we need movement. So here it is, itis galore. I like to say from A to Z, arthritis to uveitis. There was no Z I could find, but arthritis and colitis relate to the joints and to the gut, which I referred to earlier. And gout and Lyme are kind of inflammatory responses as well. I'm just naming ones that are rare, but also ones that are very common. Oops, sorry, just touching this, move the slide. Just to say again that when a body area is inflamed, your body is protecting you. So it's a positive response, at least at first. Now, what causes that swelling? It's the fluid building up from these white blood cells going to the rescue. So where you see WBC, that's going to be me talking about white blood cells. What are those white blood cells? They're the ones that, the cells, other than the red blood cells, we're also familiar with our red blood, that contain attacking cells to kill off bacteria. So I like to think of Pac-Man. The white blood cells are rushing in to eliminate and to contain the pathogen. So that's part of the swelling, is kind of surround the area and then destroy and heal. And that's true for allergic reactions as well. So when you have an allergic reaction, it's basically kind of getting a little swollen, getting a little drippy. Those kinds of fluid movements are helping us to cleanse the area. So once again, does movement help? Music is something on my mind too. We'll talk about that later. Does movement help the immune system? Absolutely. It does so by strengthening overall wellness. In particular, aerobic activity, large body rhythmic activity will help pump the immune system. And we'll talk a lot more about that. And it's cleaning out toxins. That's what it's doing during this process. So again, the parts, so we're going in circles. There are the organs, and I mentioned the spleen and tonsils at the bottom, but I want to mention now the bone marrow. So inside our bones, the softer, more liquid, porous part of the bone is generating what are called B cells, which are part of that attacking, protecting white blood cell. And they secrete antibodies. And they also get the T cells going, which then migrate to the thymus gland. So B is for bone, T is for thymus. And the thymus gland develops these T cells. So once they're there, it helps them grow. And they are the ones that have the markers for whether or not they've ever attacked that pathogen before. So there's this kind of differentiation of parts, and it helps us know what we need for a given situation. Very intelligent. What to me is very poignant is that the thymus gland is also important for what's called adolescent growth hormone. So those growth spurts that we have in utero, in the first year of life, and then at adolescence are very important. And we need a certain hormone to help the growth. Until the late or mid 80s, it wasn't understood that there was another function of the thymus. And I'm touching my thymus right now. And if anybody wants to, we're going to come to this as part of the movement, is to stimulate the thymus, which is right behind the top of the breastbone, a kind of shield. So you can just tap that, or you can be more like Tarzan and really thump it, but be gentle, make sure it has a kind of resilience, bouncy quality. So the thymus wasn't known to also develop these T cells. And it was the AIDS virus that taught us that. My prayer is that we will learn a lot from the coronavirus as well. But right now, we're benefiting from the AIDS virus, teaching us how important this is to our health and to our ability to protect ourselves. The spleen, and I'm not going to get too much more detail, but for those of you who want, is producing platelets, and then white blood cells are stored there. Blood is filtered there, and it helps to even fight. It also helps fighting certain bacteria, specifically pneumonia and meningitis. Amazing, huh? And then the tonsils are like another version. Actually, the lymph nodes are smaller than some tonsils. So anyway, they are similar to each other. And now there's the bone marrow, just a quick picture of forming red blood cells, having fat cells in there, but also helping with the white blood cells. And again, there are two types of white blood cells that we'll talk about today. The T and the B cells, they're called lymphocytes. So there's that word lymph. And they're produced also in the lymph nodes or the spleen when needed. So let's talk more about the lymph in a minute. And again, the T cells are produced and mature, they're produced or developed in the thymus gland. They're produced in the blood cells and then move here. So let's do this again. Let's tap and touch or breathe. If you don't want to tap, you could just put your hand here and breathe into the thymus. And then I'm going to tilt my screen down a little and go to my left side and come into the spleen area. It's right back here. If you were going to stand with an arched back, you'd be what we call falling into your spleen. So you can put both hands here and have a kind of three-dimensional breathing. So you pick a spot. It could be here. It could be your spleen. Or if you've been having swollen lymph nodes in your neck or even your armpits, you could just bring a little breathing into this area. This is the somatic awareness. I have a body, and if I take the time to slow down and feel my body, which actually became a key line in this article in the New York Times last week called Moving Body and Soul, where I'm talking about slowing down to feel. We can tap into the body's self-regulatory healing capacity. So you notice I've slowed down, talking a little softer, a little slower, so that we can pay attention and listen to what the sensations are in our bodies. That's the somatic approach. So somatic awareness means the living body. It's a Greek word. So in Greece, when you are working with your body, it's called the soma. If someone happens to die, and this is part of life, then it becomes a body, a corpo, right? So we're always moving as a living body. Even when we're still, there's movement inside of us. Our breath is moving. Our immune system is moving. Even when we're sitting, but we need to move more to keep everything really lively. Somatic means I'm aware of my body sensations. I'm listening to my body's wisdom. And there's a word for that. There's actually a sensory apparatus. We have eyes, we have a nose, we have mouth, but we also have joint receptors and muscle receptors. And that includes to the organs, which is called proprioception or interoception. Somatic movement involves movement that's mindful, which is actually my book over here. I'll share more about that if you're interested, called Mindful Movement. And then touch, what we just did. Vocalization can be great because it vibrates the areas and it expresses feeling. So that's the psychosocial aspect, psychophysical aspect of our work. So all of this helps us get more sensation and feel our bodies more. And hopefully then we listen to what we feel. And I'm bringing in somatic fitness now because we're talking about movement. And so exercise classes that have more of this somatic awareness would be called somatic fitness. And Moving for Life is one of the earliest somatic fitness programs, started in 1999. So we've been going almost 22 years now, just starting. And then there are things like the Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, zero balancing, body mind centering, and Bartenian fundamentals are somatic systems I was trained in. And a lot of these people were trained in Eastern and African methods. So a lot of this work has its derivative in indigenous healing as well, like Qigong, we say Qigong, which is what my teacher, Irmgard Bartenian, studied. So here's that thymus that you were tapping. This picture shows it kind of low. You can picture it a little higher and even up into the throat area. So the lymphatic system is the lymph fluid that carries the white blood cells. And so when we saw all those green lines, and I'll show that slide again, going all through your body, they come out of the capillaries where the red blood cell ends up in the cell. And then we have to get that back to circulate and to the heart region as well, to those cisterns we talked about through this thoracic duct region. So again, we're protecting from invaders, we're maintaining fluid levels, we're absorbing digestive tract fats through the lymph and removing waste. It has a lot of functions. And the vessels are important, the actual tubes. There are mostly on the surface. 60 to 70% of the lymphatic vessels are on the surface. And this becomes important now, because now I'm going to ask you to imagine that you're putting on a glove, stroking your hand in such a way that you're kind of tugging a little bit, but gently along your fingers, along your hand. And especially if there's been any kind of problem in the nodes, then you would want to come through the armpit. Or for everybody, whether it's from the throat, again, a very soft touch, but with a little bit of a pull coming into this left side, larger lymphatic duct. And then the right side is not as big, but also important. So again, down the neck or from the arm. And if you would join me, this is part of the exercise. It's somatic, so it's more about touch. And we're going to do movement that helps this as well. And then also, I can show just very quickly, sitting back here, you can do this from seated. You can do any of this seated, the tapping, the movement. And I've made a video that you can watch, and we can do it with music that's in a chair, but of course, anything can be done standing if you have the balance or if you want to hold on. All right, so that's working with the lymph vessels. Begins out in the extremities. It's called the periphery of the body and moves centrally. Wow, there are a lot of lymph nodes in the body, 500 to 600 nodes. So we need to keep them healthy as well. So again, the green is the lymph. Here's a lymph node. The fluid's coming out of the cells, traveling through nodes. There are little valves. And yes, the lymph vessels have a bit of a circulatory system too, a tiny little pump inside them. We call that the intrinsic pump. And it moves it back into the blue blood, which will then connect with the heart, and we'll have filtered, clean blood here with the red oxygenated blood. Carbon dioxide filled blood is doing its work as well. So here we have the lymphatic system. But what is the pump for the lymphatic system? Why even move the lymph? Why stimulate the immune system? Well, we want to fight those infections. We want to have general good health just from exercise. And there is even the possibility of reducing tumor growth. These are very new studies, and many more studies are needed to validate that. So again, what moves the lymph? What stimulates this lymphatic system or the immune system? Well, I'll ask you, what moves the red blood? I think everybody knows. It's your heart pumping. What moves the lymph? Well, it turns out movement is the pump, because the extrinsic pump is muscle movement. And in particular, you notice I'm squeezing my hands right now. We want to squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. So please join me. And I'm going to even show you that I have, for Moving for Life, we like to use strengthening with weights as well. I think you can hear. This isn't like kind of filled with sand. So it's squishy. So the squeezing I'm talking about is a squeezing that's like a hug. It's a squeezing that's gentle. It's not so tight that you're building up high blood pressure. You don't want to heighten your blood pressure. You want to have a kind of resiliency, like squeezing water out of a sponge just in time to feel the sponge fill up again. So just try that. And now I'll share with you something I learned way back when I was studying gymnastics a long time ago, but I find some of my octogenarians really love this one. We go claw fist and then spill, then pull and push. Claw fist. This is from Toby Towson, who was my teacher at NYU years ago. And push. Claw fist, spill as much as you can. If that hurts too much, just do a little. And pull and push. Again, the somatic way is to feel what feels good in your body and only do what feels good, because then you'll continue it. And even that little bit is really important. So if you're only doing a tiny little bit, that's fine. If you're getting a big stretch and it goes all the way through your elbows, that's great. But it's not critical if it's causing pain. Okay. So again, what moves the lymph? The muscle pump. Movement is the pump. So we've got squeezing going. What about rocking? Yep, that helps too. Walking is your most important pump. So now I'm going to focus on my feet. I'm going to move back so you can see more of my body. And I think I have to move way back. So let's see. Here we go. And I'll just walk around a chair just a little bit. But the main thing is to see that the foot, I'm going toe ball, heel, and heel ball, toe. So this is a big part of what we do in Moving for Life. Just swaying. Could be side to side swing, could be front to back swing, could be on a diagonal. So we work with all the swings, and then we walk around really pushing off of our toes. All right, there's enough of me being headless. So there we are, really using the feet. So here I'm using my hands as if it's a foot, heel, ball of the foot, toe. That's going to pump. I don't know how many of you have had this experience, but when I first was visiting my own mother in the hospital in the 1980s, when she was bedridden, her ankles would start to swell. Well, now if you go to the hospital and someone's bedridden for a while, there's a machine that's pumping from the ankle up the leg. That is doing the muscle pumping that's not happening because when you're bedridden, you can't walk. However, you can rock your heels on the bed, and I'm actually going to demonstrate that. It's the reason I have two chairs together here. So hopefully you can see this okay. So this idea that I could actually push and flex and point my foot to move my pelvis. So that's a rocking. And you can do that standing. And I'll show my feet one more time. So we're just rocking back and forth. And I can repeat a few of these when the slides are off so you can see me a little bigger. So squeezing from the periphery of the body is really important because that's where the lymph starts. And then it travels through these vessels. So we've got rocking, we've got walking as a kind of rocking, we've got squeezing for our extrinsic pump. And that helps the valves of the internal vessels of the pump that's inside, that's much more subtle. Now, the squeezing only does a certain amount. We also are going to need to stretch, so we'll show that in a minute. The valves and pressure in the muscles are important, and this is one way. So here, let's repeat again. There's your thymus. Here are these ducts where the green comes into the blue. The left side is very important, as is, both sides are important, over the collarbone and down, coming from the periphery of the body up and over, periphery of the body up and over the collarbone. Here we go down through the throat from these lymph nodes. And from the leg, it has to come up and through and then find its way back to the heart as well. All right. And there's the spleen and the thymus and the different tonsils and the bone marrow. So you've seen it all. Again, the T cells are tailored to really adapt our immune response to the types of pathogens that come our way. It gets the system ready for the right strategy for specific germs. So we need these T cells to be kind of smart. The lymph nodes filter, so that's just repeating that. They're in the armpit, the throat, and the hip region. 5 to 600 of them. So let's do a little more tapping or thumping like Tarzan or Jane of the breastbone. Now let's get the lymph circulating. So pretending to put on the glove. So here, what am I doing here? I'm not just stroking, I'm also stretching my elbow. One of the ideas here is if I kind of keep my arm sluggish, it's like having a hammock that's just everything's dripping more down. But if we want like a river for something to flow, we need to get it kind of taut and open the pathways. You also may notice that I'm a little bit above my heart. You can be as high up as you like. That's going to help the drainage through the nodes. However, if you are uncomfortable up here, you can be wherever, but a little above the heart makes a big difference. If you lie down and you just pick your arms up, that'll be above your heart. If you're seated, just a little bit is fine. But if, again, you want to try different positions, they're all good. For the legs, same thing. Draining by stroking the leg as if you're putting on leggings, or lying down and putting your legs up on a pillow or up the wall. Very important. And in all cases, you want to kind of come up the side of the body and then over the collarbone. The hypothesis here is that this helps the filters so that the lymph is getting back into the lymph nodes. Now, if you're missing lymph nodes, you even need the spleen and other parts to work more rigorously, or the other nodes. So just circulating it more through the body, getting the lymph moving through the body is going to help. So once again, let's move the lymph. So here we are repeating. We were tapping. We are having our movement through here. We're squeezing, and now we're going to squeeze and hug and breathe in. And you can even make a sound kind of, and all of that stimulates pressure from the inside and out. And now make a ha or high sound there. And that going out with your exhalation, stretching the vessels so that you can do this again. So here we go, tapping, waking up the vessels from underneath, from over, from here, wherever you want, from your leg, if you like, and then a hug, and then a stretch, and then down again. Beautiful. And you can tap your spleen, swinging. We do a little bit of swinging, quite a lot of swaying in the Moving for Life work as well. So the other piece is that aerobic activity. So if you just are rocking in your chair right now, I'd be very happy. You don't need a rocking chair to rock. You can rock from your heels or your sit bones. So again, when does the lymphatic system or the immune system seem to be operative? When you have a sprain or a strain, muscle pull, a ligamentous rip, if you will, when you have a virus, a bacterial infection, foreign cells in the area, and the signals are red or swollen or hot or painful or not functioning, could be that there's so much pressure the nerves are impacted. You could even have numbness. And we do whole lectures on neuropathy as well when you don't have sensation. Reviewing what moves the immune system. Now you can answer. Movement is the pump. Fluids all need a pump. Fighting gravity all day long needs help because everything's going down. It might go below the heart. We have to bring it back up. The heart pumps the blood. What is the pump for the fluid system? The lymph system, the fluids of the immune system. It's movement. But rest is important too. In terms of cancer, fatigue is the #1 symptom of cancer treatment, and it's also #1 symptom of many chronic diseases. So if you're feeling exhausted, that might not like so much that you just can go to sleep, it might be a better day to take a nap, lie down, meditate, nap, or do mindful movement in bed. If you're just feeling kind of glum, a little depressed, low energy, that's a day where if you do get up, and even if you're just sitting and rocking, you probably will start to feel the benefits of the blood circulating, meaning the red blood cells, and the lymph circulating, meaning the white blood cells. Getting moving really helps. So we say move, move, move. And how do we move? We walk, we swim, we bike, we dance. Now, with the pandemic going on, you have to get more creative. And so there's a lot online you can do. Moving for Life is a gentle exercise program that was designed for people that hadn't been moving very much or who had movement in a way taken away from them and needed to regain entry. So it's a very sweet way. And I like to teach that as you go forth into other classes, whether they're dance classes or exercise classes or fitness classes, just really make sure the teacher is advocating for you to pay attention to your body and to only do what really feels comfortable to you. So all movement helps, but specific types of movements that I've just demonstrated are designed to activate the thymus, activate the lymph. And that's the walking with not just shuffling your feet, but really pushing off the feet, getting that rocking action through the ankles. So that goes for biking too. If you're on a stationary bike and you're just kind of keeping your foot like this, it's going to help because you're using other really big muscles. So it's fine. But if you can add in like that toe clip feeling of pulling through the ankle, it's just going to get those 26 bones of the feet active too. So I believe movement's medicine. I have friends writing books with those titles. Our bodies are designed to move. Joints are where movement happens. They're called articulations because we're supposed to articulate them. So if we don't move our joints, actually that sedentary lifestyle, that sitting, can just cause itis. Arthritis can happen, in my experience, from just not moving, not getting the synovial fluid moving or the lymphatic fluid into the area. And again, lymph needs this special movement. Rocking and squeezing, and then also stretching are part of an effective pump. So I've designed a 4-minute Moving for Life immune system booster, and it's now on the Anticancer Lifestyle website, or it will be soon. You're going to get it as a little video clip with this lecture. We have it on our Moving for Life website, which is where you also can find our free classes, which are every day in different time zones. You'll find a time, hopefully. We hope to have more. We have about 50 teachers around the world. And so if you let us know you're interested and tell us where you are, we can put you in touch with different teachers. But let's just remember, thymus thumping and tapping like Tarzan, putting on your gloves or your leggings, squeezing and stretching. And then I have a little phrase that actually involves stretching the whole body, tilting. And it came actually from when I was doing choreography about my mom's own cancer. And I first tested it on my sister-in-law. And I just want to say her name today in honor of her kind of saying, yeah, keep this program going. Her name's Isabel Quintana Eddy, and I dedicate today's lecture to her. It's also fun because today would have been my dad's 101st birthday. So both Isa and my father, Norman Eddy, would come to Moving for Life classes. Dad came in his wheelchair, and we welcome people in their walkers and wheelchairs. So movement for the immune system is squeezing, bringing lymph back to the heart, stretching, getting the lymph vessels more open for better flow, rhythmic movement, alternating between the squeezing of the muscle and the releasing of that muscle, getting the heart beating more strongly so that it can affect the whole hydrostatic pumping of both the red and the white blood cells, And just adding in any rocking in an area, especially if you need it in the armpit area. You need to do a little extra in the arms, rocking from there, or the head. In my body mind dancing class, which is what was talked about in the New York Times, we do a lot of just gentle swaying and rocking. In Moving for Life, we include this gentle movement, intelligent science-based exercise, fun, getting to know each other, expressive rhythms with fun music for different age groups. We vary the music for different cultures. We mix it all up for everybody. We experience it as a kind of group wellness support. There's a lot of nonverbal exchange, but then people also talk. So here, I'll give you a moment, and this will go into the chat as well. This is our website and our class schedule. And these are some of the elements. I'm not going to go all into them, but we check for the heart rate and the talk test. What does that mean? If you're so out of breath that you can't talk, you're exercising too much and you want to bring it down. Breath support, ease of movement, self-care, your own awareness help. Have fun, do what works for you. And we like to give you some mental challenge too. So really knowing, we were quoted in the AARP August edition about helping the brain, that this exercise, this heart movement is also helping the brain. And if you do have to bring your heart rate down, that is where some Qigong really comes in. I often will incorporate that into Moving for Life, where we actually bring the hands down below the heart to start and assist the exercise heart rate to come down pretty rapidly, which is a sign of excellent health. So we're going to end here. This is your review. Main thing, what can you do? Move. Be aware of your joint alignment. If you're having joint pain, it might not just be because of arthritis or inflammation or injury. It could be because you're not using your body well. And so somatic movement lessons will help teach about body alignment, body anatomy. Become more mindful as you move, meditate and move together in a somatic fitness class or a somatic movement class. There's a whole conference on that starting in March, which you can find on my website. Breath-based movement helps relax the body and mind. Gentle fluid movement lubricates joints and the lymph. Aerobic activity gets the blood flowing and the whole system more vitalized is the word I was looking for. Tapping and stretching can activate the lymph, the nodes, and the thymus. Inclining and reclining and rest are all important for the whole body, but also for lymph drainage. And eating well is important. This lecture is not about that, but Anticancer Lifestyle has a wonderful lecture on anti-inflammatory diet to support your overall health. And so you might want to look for that in the chat as well. And just on that subject, keeping a healthy gut is important. Getting your alkaline, less acid, less sugar, less carbos. So that's part of what you will learn if you study anti-inflammatory diet or come to this lecture. Okay. So finally, one last time, let's do it. Tap, stroke, squeeze, stretch. Again, reach and hug. We need 12 hugs a day. Walk in place, rock. And stretch, saying my space, keeping those toxins out, having clear body boundaries. So that's a 20-second version of the 4-minute workout. I find that you will remember this best if you share this knowledge. And what a generous thing to do. So try to find someone to share this lesson today with, and get your family and colleagues to join you in the pleasures of paying attention to their bodies. We don't teach this enough in schools. It's part of my mission to work with children and in the school systems as well. Movement is safe and it's therapeutic if you learn more about how it works. So experience the power of a well-designed exercise program and advocate for safety in your classes. Tell your teacher, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't feel good to me. Take time to learn about anti-inflammatory diet and share this knowledge, okay, with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues. So thank you. And here's our online class. And Seema will take it from here, or I can advance the slides if you like. You let me know.
Okay, I think I should be able to, so let me just go
I think
ahead
you're
and,
good. Yep.
yeah, I think I'm good. All right, let's see.
So thank you, everyone.
And, all
Oh,
right, oh, nope,
going the other
sorry,
way.
I'm going the wrong way. Okay.
There you
All
go.
right, there we are. Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Eddy. So we are going to move into Q&A now. So we've gotten a lot of questions already in the chat box during the presentation, but feel free to keep asking them and we will try and get through as many as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question. And I really loved this question because I think it's a question people don't ask often in America, and it's around showering and immunity. So somebody was asking, how often do we actually need to shower when it comes to building our immunity?
Interesting question about showering. I mean, what I'm aware of is that warm water brings the red blood cells to the surface, and cold water brings the lymphatic system to the surface. So, a cool or cold shower or ending your shower with coolness could be very helpful.
Okay. Let's see.
Frequency is really up to the person, and
Okay.
what you have access to.
Gotcha. Okay. And then in terms of pressure, so how much pressure should we exert in the lymphatic massage, and then how much is too much?
Great, really important question. So remember I mentioned that the bulk, 60 to 7% of the lymphatic vessels are at the surface. So it's just under the skin. So that's why I was giving this image of putting on a glove. When you put on a glove, you're not pushing hard. You're just kind of tugging a little bit to get it to fit around your fingers. So if you just try that, that's usually enough. Now, obviously, if it's really stiff and you're working hard, that's too much, but it's just under the skin. It actually should feel pleasurable. Okay, it's kind of a sensual feeling.
Okay. And then somebody's asking, does it matter which side you start massaging on?
Great question. If you might recall, I mentioned that the duct on the left is stronger. So at Moving for Life, we do the classic kind of for breast cancer survivors, walking up the wall exercise. And we try to start on the left and you go as far as you can. And we cycle through the left side first, just opening up that circulation and then come to the right. However, there's no absolute, it's just an extra assistance. You can do either.
Okay. And we did have somebody was asking about the references, so I just pulled up. I can leave that screen on there in case
Sure.
people want to refer to
Now,
the
these are just books, but the last one is where I pulled up quite a bit about the anatomy. There are other articles that I use all the time, but the book I mentioned of my own, and then Super Genes is another one that talks some about diet. And then I have a new book coming out that will be looking at the hormonal systems, which will include the thymus gland and movement. So I thought that would be a fun one. And then again, this last one, very helpful, I found. And I picked ones that I thought were reader friendly for those of you that aren't scientists, but obviously there are a lot more from scientific journals.
Perfect. Yeah. And we also included your URL for your classes. Those classes are free. And like you said, and they're very inclusive. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to those classes. And I guess in terms of frequency and how often to do a lymphatic massage, do you have any sort of recommendations on how many times per day or per week?
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, for instance, for people who have lymphedema, I've had people come to my Moving for Life class and then say that just coming to class 2 or 3 times a week is great. It makes a big difference. However, if they're about to take an airplane trip and that's going to have a hyper pressurized air system, there's often increased swelling that is hard to decrease afterwards. So before that trip, during that trip, and after that trip, that person, I'm telling one story, found that it really helped to engage that frequently before the cause of more pressure, during a little bit, and then after. So that's a day where you might want to do it 3 times a day. None of these things would hurt to do more often. I mean, just giving yourself a hug. If we need 12 hugs a day and we can't get them from other people right now, breathing in and then just some kind of yawn and stretch is going to help the immune system. Walking is going to help the immune system. So if you're not doing it because you're home, then it's just, you got to plan it and say, okay, I'm going to get up and wash my dishes over periods of time versus all at once, so that you spread it out during the day. If you're naturally walking because you're walking to the bus station, or your job involves walking, then you don't have to encourage it as much. But if you have a sedentary lifestyle, try to get in 5 times a day, I would say. Oh, I lost you.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so 5 times a day, and I really love the hugging yourself concept. I know a lot of us need that right now during COVID, and it actually surprisingly feels better than you expect. So, okay, so we have another question in terms of, I don't know how much you know about yoga, but somebody's asking about ujjayi breath, so breathing in and breathing out
Mhm.
in yoga. Does that accomplish stimulating the thymus?
Wonderful question. Couple things. When we're working with the diaphragm, that's another way to squeeze from inside. So the diaphragm, when it contracts, actually widens at its base, making a vacuum for the lungs to pull in air. So any diaphragmatic breathing, so starting with that one, is going to be helpful for the lymphatic system because it's moving all the little ducts and giving them more squeezing action from the core of the body. The other breaths that might involve more the vocal cords or different kinds of glottis use are also going to help the neck region. So if you're doing a combination of diaphragmatic and what we call vocal diaphragm work, yes, that will be very helpful.
So in terms of qigong, is everything you're teaching kind of very similar, or like can that be done sort of in place of, or is that a good practice to kind of start?
Absolutely. Both Tai Chi and Qigong are really our predecessors of somatic movement. The idea of moving slowly with awareness is embedded in these ancient forms. So, and the fact that you are moving your body weight through space is going to get the heart rate going. It's more active than just doing some asanas from yoga. So, it's on the continuum of becoming more and more aerobic. So, for instance, yoga is great for the breath work and then also for stretching, getting the vessels open. But it's not necessarily, unless you're very new to it or you're taking a more vinyasa kind of class, or a class that there are several types that are more aerobic with maybe even jumping, but maybe you don't want to jump. So then it's better, and especially if you're just getting started with moving, to do slow Tai Chi and Qigong kind of movements. And the exercises are designed to help open the meridians of the body, the energy flows. So those are great. And then if you like dancing to music, or that's just what's more fun for you, then this aerobic activity not only incorporates those, but also a class like Moving for Life has slow movement, has fast movement. We have an arc of warming up and cooling down, and using, some of our teachers incorporate qigong into the class, others incorporate other kinds of systems like buto. So there's a lot of diversity between teachers too, even though everybody has the principles and the anatomy and the movement observation knowledge.
Perfect. Okay. So it is 12 o'clock. It's actually a little past. We are going to stay on to answer questions. But I did want to, thank everyone who attended today. And in case you have to jump off, just remind everyone that if you're interested in taking our course, it is available for free at www.anticancerlifestyle.org. And Erica did just put the link in the chat box. So if you do have to jump off, thank you all so much for coming today. We're going to continue maybe for another 5 or 10 minutes to make sure we get all of your questions answered. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. You just mentioned jumping. So somebody was asking, do you think small indoor trampolines are effective for lymph movement? And if so, how long would you recommend jumping on one?
Wonderful. I myself do own the mini trampoline, and you just want to make sure they're pretty good quality because I think, there are a lot of knockoffs off there. And if they're new, they're all usually pretty good, but the springs can start to loosen up. So just be very mindful of what's safe for you and how adaptable you are. How are your reflexes? If you get off to the side a little bit, can you get back to the middle? However, even if your reflexes aren't that good and you don't want to jump, we just bounce on the trampoline, and all of that is great. It's got the resiliency that I was talking about when I talked about squeezing in a more fluid kind of way. So, absolutely, the rebounder, mini trampoline, bouncing is going to be useful. It's also great for the pelvic floor and a lot of other parts of the diaphragmatic work that I was talking about before.
Interesting. Okay. And then in terms of dry brushing, how do you feel about dry brushing?
Excellent, really important. I wish that kind of American culture, or I was raised with this knowledge. It took me traveling and being like in Sri Lanka and Morocco to really learn that people know about this. The dead skin is just clogging our pores, and that to actually get the skin vitalized. And right, that brushing, it's light, it flakes dead skin off, but it's also stimulating right under the skin. So it's stimulating the lymphatic system. So remember, brush from the periphery back towards center. That might be something that people aren't teaching when they teach about brushing.
Gotcha. Okay. And then we have a specific question. My mother has lymphedema swelling in the right side of her leg. Is there something more strongly recommended or to be avoided?
So I'm thinking, I'm imagining just right leg. One of the things I would want to do is open that left duct flow, right? So that's the big area. And then really play with the torso, getting some movement going from the legs. Um, I don't know if there's anything to be avoided aside from just being sedentary. So the idea of, if someone has to stay seated, finding that rocking either with the heel on a stool or with the feet up, or once in bed, seeing if the bed is firm enough to do some rocking with, that will help. And I would spend time feeling what the left side does naturally, and then imagining it on the right side. So this is a technique from the Feldenkrais method, that our body can transfer information across the midline, um, with visualization and imagination. So that could be one way to sort of wake up the right side, but then also do it on the right side unless it hurts or you get a bad response. Now that's part of somatics, is noticing a kind of increase of discomfort. It's also not atypical to have a little more discomfort before it subsides, because let's say we've been numb and just sort of ignoring a body area. You bring attention to it, you're going to start to feel it, and it's going to feel whatever it feels. So a little bit of increase for a day of some kind of new sensation is worth watching. If it persists, you definitely have to change what you're doing or consult an expert, and that can be a medical doctor and also some kind of movement expert.
Perfect. In terms of, because I think for some people this feels very like light and you're not really getting in there. Somebody's asking about a deep tissue massage versus lymphatic massage, and are they both equally as effective?
They have different impacts. So deep tissue massage is going to help move the fascia, and fascia is the connective tissue between the layers of muscles that help keep them differentiated. So it gets at the muscles that are deep, and the lymph is down in there. So it's going to move your body, and that movement from the inside out will have a hydrostatic kind of shift. And yet, if you don't also do the superficial, you may not get the full lymphatic experience. You'll get a great experience for your muscles, and you'll get a new experience perhaps for your fascia, because we don't spend a lot of time taking care of our fascia. I did just do a lecture for Tensegrity, TEA, which is a group that really understands the fascial systems. And it's another free lecture system that you might want to look into. Tensegrity, meaning the tensile integrity of your body. And the T is spelled TEA. And it's a fun group to visit on Friday afternoons.
Okay, we'll grab that URL from you after the webinar, and we'll include it in the follow-up email. Also, I don't know if everyone knows, but Dr. Eddy was in the New York Times recently, and if you haven't checked out that article yet, Erica can definitely link to it in the chat. So we have another question here regarding anxiety and the lymphatic system. Can you just kind of talk about how anxiety affects the lymphatic system?
Really interesting question. It's not a correlation that instantly comes to my mind or in any of the studies that I've done. Anxiety and breath are very correlated. Anxiety and shoulder tension is very correlated. So if I now put those two together, shoulder tension and the lymphatic system, what did we say was really important through this area? If this area doesn't have its natural kind of squeeze and release happening, then these ducts can feel kind of compressed or sluggish, too open, not getting the kind of movement they need. So that would be one way to look at anxiety. Has it come into your shoulder region or your chest? Often the heart region, together with the head, brain, and neck, are places that hold anxiety. I mean, you can have anxiety anywhere. It can be in your hands, it can be in your feet. Um, but often it is in this area. So getting some squeezing, I mean, a lot of what we do in Moving for Life is shrugging our shoulders, learning to feel two ends of a muscle come together and apart in a kind of luxuriating, lubricating way. So that's what I can suggest, maybe some of the correlations. But you could also mention if it's a different body area that you sense your anxiety in. Let me say one more thing,
Perfect.
because it's a really interesting
Yeah.
question. Remember the idea that the lymph system is about keeping the invaders, kind of either keep them out, that's the healthy thing, or once they're in, kind of coming to the rescue. So anxiety can often be that you don't feel strong enough to do that. So what I do find, and this is with a lot of people dealing with life-threatening illnesses and others with like big life management issues, like I work a lot as a specialist with mobility disorders. So we've got Parkinson's disease and multiple sclerosis and other kinds of issues. So there's a lot of anxiety around the medical appointments, around what can I do in my life? What's happening? Am I gonna live this long? Can I control my glass as I put it down? And with all of those, I have found that especially this hugging and stretching and saying my space or claiming space is really empowering and has shifted people's anxiety level during class.
Okay, so we have just a couple more minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and ask maybe about two more questions. Someone asked, my pulse rate is about 120. Can I still do exercise? Will it increase my pulse rate even more or too much?
I missed the number, or was it
Oh,
just
120.
already quite high? Yeah. So that Tai Chi and Qigong movement would be really good. That idea that I mentioned of bringing the arms below the heart and letting the exercise. So here we're working the energetic system. Um, those will actually help monitor your pulse and perhaps, if it's also an issue, your blood pressure. But movement will help. It just needs to be slow, methodical, and not. Oh, by the way, there was a question from another group about, can you ever kind of get overly inflamed from exercise or do too much exercise for the lymph system? And yes, too much exercise will heat you up way too much. So if you're already quite hot, you might want to stay more cool, do this lower, slower rocking and swaying kind of movement versus this heavy duty aerobic activity.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think that's great advice, especially we live in such a culture of doing and doing and doing that it's always nice to kind of stop and listen to what our bodies are actually telling us. So I guess my last question here is in terms of sort of like hacks and like how to integrate movement into your everyday life, you know, are there maybe a couple of things that you do in your own life to make sure, you know, if you're sitting and watching TV, you know, do you say I'm going to watch one episode of something while, you know, doing movement, or do you have any sort of, I guess, little hacks that you do to help people sort of integrate movement into their daily life?
One is somebody else's system, but it's called meditationbell.com. And you can just set a bell to say, let me reduce my anxiety, let me get up. So any kind of little alarm system is a great idea if you spend a lot of time at the computer or a lot of time in front of the television or just a lot of time sitting. Standing, I chose to stand for this lecture, and it meant that I had to, adjust the camera a little bit, but that's better than me sitting the whole time. I wanted to model for you that doing my work standing is actually helping keep this circulation going rather than pooling into my hips and the pelvis region. The rocking that I mentioned can be done anytime during the day. Now, it might drive you guys nuts if I'm in a lecture and I'm rocking, but sometimes I'm sitting on a physio ball. And that also is working my equilibrium, getting my inner ear going, keeping me mobilized, getting the diaphragm moving in a different way. So all of that type of hacking, if you will, where you just give yourself a change your shoes, change your chair, change to something that's more mobile or less mobile, rock a little bit when you normally would just stand very still, are the kinds of things I would do.
Perfect. Okay. And you know what? I said I was only going to ask one more question, but we got a question just now that I think is probably relevant to a lot of people in terms of arthritis. So somebody asked, I have a lot of pain in my right hip due to moderate arthritis. Is there any particular exercise that will help?
So when we're talking about arthritis, we're talking about the joint and the joint capsule. And within the joint capsule is fluid for most joints, and it's called synovial fluid. So working the synovial fluid, there's no pump for that either except movement. And so we do a whole lecture, Moving for Life. Do check out the lecture series. If you go to our website, just kind of look through the different days. And there's one on joints and managing joint pain. And this is where we'll talk more about this. But just jiggling, or many people know being kind of in a warm swimming pool, just putting your hands in a warm sink full of warm water and moving either from the outside, from the water, or from the inside, from your own shaking, just finding what you can do. Some people like to go really fast. Some people like to just be very gentle. This will mobilize. Again, we talked about touch. You can literally circle at every phalangeal joint, every different part of each finger. There are a lot of different bones in the feet, just as there are a lot of different bones in the hands. Getting them to differentiate, to find that they each are important just by kind of self-care and self-love is really helpful. So come back for our other lectures.
Excellent. Yes. Okay. So I think that is a good note to end on. Self-love. It's February. It's almost Valentine's Day. So hopefully everyone will be giving themselves a lot of hugs after this webinar. Like I said earlier, if you guys are interested in our course, you can just go to www.anticancerlifestyle.org. Thank you again, Dr. Eddy, for today's presentation. If you're interested, like I said, this is our URL, which Erica will also put in the chat. And I think that is it for today. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to everyone who attended and stayed on.
Yes, it's great to see how many of you stayed on. Thank you for your extra time, and have a great, safe day, week, month.
Thank you.